Yeah, baby. We ready?
Yeah.
We're just going to go right into it? 5,
Yeah.
4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, no, not Rhythm Nation. My bad. I was listening to Janet Jackson today. Okay.
That's a great intro. Hey, we're back in the studio with our good friend Rebecca, and we are here to talk about what today, Doc?
Well, today we have an interesting topic. We've talked about it before, but we're going to start trying to do some stuff that people are interested in and that come up as we go. Travel, we do a lot of vacationing and traveling. Last time we had Rebecca on the show, we talked about some travel stuff, but this time specifically, because we have a cruise coming up ourselves. So E and his significant other and a couple other friends, we cruise regularly. Shout out to Darlene and Brian. So yeah, we're getting ready to launch on another cruise in a couple of weeks with Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, the Icon of the Seas. Right now, the largest ship sailing. But there are a ton of cruise ships, ton of different cruise lines that you can cruise with. And so Rebecca went out on a cruise recently that I was curious about because it was actually, I'd received something about being a retired veteran about they had some promotion where I could actually do like a short cruise out of Tampa for free or something like that. And it wasn't because I was bougie, like somebody said, but it's just because I'm skeptical.
You're not bougie, Doc?
I'm not.
Is that what we're playing?
No,
You are.
But what had happened was...
Which part of you is not bougie?
What?
The Ferrari hat, the Ferrari shirt, or the Ferrari watch?
Okay, so wait.
Which part?
This is not
It's
Ferrari.
pants too? Ferrari pants too.
100% bougie.
You know what? I'm not even gonna say I got them from Milan, the Ferrari shop in Milan. I'm not even gonna tell you that.
I got it from Milan.
I'm not even gonna tell you that. I'm not even gonna tell you that.
But I'm not bougie.
But I'm not,
And
you know.
by the way, he's talking about Milan in Italy.
Exactly. So
Not a store named
What?
Milan.
is your claim that bougie is bourgeoisie from France? That's why you're not bougie.
That's right. There you go.
Because it's from Italy.
There you go.
I get you.
But so no, what had happened was no. So I was after Ben. I don't know if you remember when my brother came on here, Ben, and we talked about his experience with MSC Cruise Line, which was literally a horror story from start to end. From people passing out in line, waiting, elderly people. The food was bad. It was just the total. I'm like, dude,
Facts.
and he said, "Oh, well, it was a good deal, and it's a reputable." I think they're Italian or Spanish. They're not an American cruise line. They're a European cruise line, but I'd never heard a cruise story that horrible, and he is not an exaggerator. So after that, I started scrutinizing cruises far. Like there's a time, shoot, man, bougie. Sometimes not. I was in the Army, man. You're like, hey, let's do this, and we're all gonna get together and have a good time. And it only costs $99. Let's do it. But unfortunately, as you all know, times have changed. Like common courtesy is not common. Common decency is not common. Carnival Cruise Line is ratchet now. It used to not be. You could go on
the spirit of the sea.
Right. Used to be, man. Carnival used to be the bomb. The key to Carnival was just to go on a longer cruises out of the newer ships, and you would get fun people who wanted to have a good time, minus the ratchet. Yep. But like now, 9 times out of 10, there's some ratchetness going on, and then
even on the longer cruises.
That's what I mean.
Exactly.
On the whole cruise line now.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, Carnival's off the list now. I can't, and it's not because I'm too bougie. It's just because I don't want to have to.
A certain family member of mine that's in love with Carnival cruises. You know who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends that cruise on Carnival all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I did too. I'm like whatever
I don't.
Back in the day,
I definitely have taken Carnival cruises back in the day.
Right. Same.
Nothing recently for me. Feedback, everything that I've gotten from friends and family has not been positive. Unfortunately.
No.
Even on the quote unquote longer trips or nicer ships.
No, we did one to check it out. Nope.
Yeah.
No, we gave them one more try. A nicer, newer ship, longer cruise, and it was bad. So we want to talk about your recent cruise experience. So like I was saying, there's a cruise line that was offering some really good incentives for military and stuff like that. But after Ben's MSC horror story, I was like, free is too cheap, and it's gonna be bad. You know what I mean? They're gonna be serving me like a horse or a dog or something disguised as like gruel or something. So no, but the cruise line is Margaritaville. So tell us, you just actually recently did one and it was not bad. So we want to talk about it.
So for context, I took the Margaritaville ship out of West Palm Beach.
Okay.
And that's their kind of flagship ship.
So you took the flagship one, there's one in Tampa, right?
There's
That's
one in
smaller.
Tampa. It's actually larger.
It's larger.
And it's newer. And I will say that they definitely market that one a little bit more. I personally would like to check that one out so that I can compare the two.
I mean, I'll do it with you now that you said it wasn't
Yeah.
a horror story.
Yeah, no, it was not a horror story, but I do have to level set. Okay.
Okay, so yeah.
So Margaritaville at Sea is a small company. They literally have 2 ships.
Okay.
Right? And they understand their audience. They're not trying to be a Royal Caribbean or a Carnival. So there's not an apples to apples comparison.
Right. Oh, well, you can compare them to MSC.
They're small. I don't know about that.
No one passed out while you're waiting to get on the ship, right? Okay, well,
No,
that's
no.
already check Margaritaville MSC 0, Margaritaville 1.
Yeah. So they were actually rated really high for family cruises.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. I will say from the check-in process, everything was smooth. Now, again, level setting. I haven't been on a cruise in a long time. I am an avid traveler. I've been to 43 countries, but cruising is not usually my thing. I prefer to fly where I'm going to go, get to it. I just like that local experience. But I said, why not? It's a couple days. Anybody can use a quick trip just to
So how long was
See
it? How long was the entire cruise?
So this one was, I don't know, what was it? 3 days. It was very short. It was like Wednesday to Friday. Was the cruise.
Okay.
Which I think, especially when people don't have a lot of time, it's a good alternative to have a nice vacation, short, but you can still have a vacation. There are people that don't travel because they think, A, I can't afford it, B, I don't have the vacation time.
Right.
Something like this, it's a quick shot, all of the food is covered. There's entertainment everywhere. One of the things that I really liked about Margaritaville, Jimmy Buffett, there's music everywhere. There's shows, there's live entertainment. There's, you'll see a guy playing the piano here. You'll see a band outside on the deck. You'll see somebody playing the guitar in the corner. There's music everywhere, and that's kind of like their shtick.
Okay, well, look, let me ask you this, because E and I, like yourself, we travel quite a bit, but the cool thing is, we probably, we just recently did Dubai. Who just got back from her annual trip to Paris. She goes every year with her girlfriend from med school, and they do the Paris thing during Fashion Week and have a great time. We're gearing up after the cruise to do south of France, Provence, Nice.
I'm doing that in July.
Portugal. See, yeah. So but I also love to cruise because one, some of the early on, before I traveled as much, it was an opportunity to recon places and decide. So the first time I ever went to Aruba was on a cruise ship. I went twice on cruises, and then we went back 2 or 3 times just to stay for a week because we liked it enough, so you could do the recon. But the other thing is, like you brought up the point, is that we love entertainment. We're the same in that, this weekend we're going to see Denzel on Broadway in Othello, which it's maybe his last live performance. We're excited right now, the number 1, the highest grossing Broadway show ever, which is really cool.
Be awesome.
Bex, you and I both love music, dance, live theater, entertain, and so to me, that's what I try to tell people. I was like, now, people will go, they're asking E and I, well, where you guys cruising? And I'm like, not joking. I go, I don't really know.
Nope.
Because the Icon, like I said, right now is the biggest ship on the sea right now, sailing. Any of the the Oasis class, even before the Icon, it's Central Park. It's like Central Park in the middle of the ship. They have the boardwalk. They have amazing theaters that are built for shows, just like Cirque du Soleil and Vegas. And then the quality of the show and entertainers, the DJs are great. The music is great. You have comedy. So it's like you go on a vacation, and you can do everything. You can go out to nice restaurants. So you can eat. It's you have a vacation where you can do almost anything you want to in a city that's contained in that ship, and that's just kind of what's cool about it. So when we're talking about to go full circle, Carnival used to have good shows, right? That's the other thing that's fallen off on Carnival. Their shows are not great because what they try to do is find people for their budget that are triple threats that can sing and dance and or play instruments or whatever.
Threats, they're just triple plays.
And I can see that.
Right. Yeah. But Royal Caribbean shows are bananas now. I saw Cats on a Royal Caribbean show, and it was as good as the Broadway version of it.
Well, I will say, so Margaritaville is not going to be Broadway.
Just to set that.
It's not Broadway. Okay.
Again,
okay. Well, no, that's what I was going to come into. Yeah.
Expectations. I mean, one thing I thought that was cool in one of the shows that I went to is the guys from the band all had their shot. They all came out front and stage. You know, there was a guy, a trumpet player, and he had his solo. And different part, they all had their moment.
Right.
And you don't always see that. Sometimes, you know, the musicians are in the back, but they were all front and stage. Everybody had their moment. How can I say this? Everyone was super talented. There were people that were dancing and singing. You know, somebody like me who has a performance background, you know, I can take it for what it is, or I can criticize it, right? If I'm looking through the lens of somebody who has been on stage, then I would say it was like community theater quality,
Right.
right? If I'm looking through the lens of a regular person who's not a singer, a dancer, performer, it was a great show.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
It's an intimate setting.
Which is nice.
Which
Yeah.
is nice. It's a smaller ship, right? So you don't get lost. I know one of the things that I've heard feedback of, you know, people that I've worked with planning cruises or what have you, is they don't necessarily always love those larger ships. And either you love it or you don't. I don't know if there's anything in between. There are folks that, yeah, they think it's amazing. And then there are others, like my friend's parents, they prefer the smaller ships. They don't like, they feel they get too lost. There's almost too much to do, which it sounds funny, but not everybody loves it. I think
Sounds
this
like
is
they have ADHD issues and they can't, like, as mature adults, decide what they would like to do and come up with a list and just stick to the. No, I'm just
Or
teasing.
no,
You know, I
maybe
mean,
they didn't,
you know,
didn't like the walking or
my,
whatever.
So what do you
my-
think, E? What about larger ships versus smaller ships? Because I have some input about that, like I do about everything.
It's funny because I have a debate with my sister or whatever. I hate smaller, older ships. Hate them.
But see, those are two different
See,
categories. So
but-
older, I don't
it's
like.
definitely different categories.
Either or.
But
I don't like
also,
them.
you guys have a different viewpoint, right? Like you mentioned, you're seasoned cruisers. I'm not a seasoned cruiser.
Right. That's why we're glad to have your perspective.
Cruising
Yeah.
is definitely not my thing. Last year, I'm going to use the example of my parents. They went on the Wonder of the Seas, and
Okay.
that was like their first cruise.
Right.
You know, so they were blown away. I mean, that's also a great ship
Right.
for our first.
Then we went on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did.
Yeah. It was a great
but-
ship.
My mom did mention it was a bit overwhelming because it was huge.
It's
and
huge.
as somebody who is not accustomed to being on a cruise
That's
ship,
understandable.
it
Yeah.
was overwhelming trying to figure out where the shows were, trying to figure out just where to eat.
It's a long, yeah.
It's a lot if you
Yeah.
haven't done it before.
long ass walk end to end. Go ahead.
So something like Margaritaville, it is smaller. This is great for first-time cruisers, people who have never been on a cruise. It's great for people that don't have a lot of PTO and they want to be able to take a vacation.
Wednesday to Friday.
They have all kinds of deals, you know, like with 2 adults, children are free. You know what I mean? So it makes it affordable for families that it gives them the opportunity
Right.
to take that vacation. Whereas, you know, I think there's a stigma with travel, you know, I can't afford it. I mean, I was watching some show on Hulu the other night. It was a new travel show. And I won't say who the person was, but this was a celebrity who was on like Univision and all kinds of shows. I mean, she's not a brand new person.
Right.
She's in her 50s.
Yeah.
She had never taken a solo trip, which is strange to me because, you know, I've been traveling since I was like 18 years old by myself.
Right.
What else? She'd never traveled by herself. And there were all these things where she was just like, oh, I've never done that. I've never done that. And it was just like amazing to me. But, you know, and she's somebody that has, in my mind, you have the money.
means-
and
you have the means to be able
resources
to
travel.
right.
There's a lot of, you know, regular folks that think I can't afford it, so they don't.
Right.
And that's not the case. So something like a Margaritaville gives people the opportunity to, you know, make payments on a smaller cruise, take a vacation on a smaller scale, and, you know, be able to enjoy themselves without going for broke.
I like what they're putting out because it is Margaritaville, hence Jimmy Buffett. And did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna cut that part out. But hence
Oh
Jimmy
no, we're
Buffett.
leaving that in. Giving it to you the real deal, baby. Playbook uncensored.
Yeah, which has always been open and welcoming, and they're inviting the family, which I think is great. And that's the huge thing is like, you know, because of the cost, sometimes you don't take the family, or you do, and yet you pay the extra cost, but then it becomes, you know, family activities, individual activities, whatever. So it's all encompassing. It's
Right.
inclusive. And I like what they're offering. Midweek, I haven't heard of a cruise that was midweek.
So-
Normally it's like end of the week.
Yeah,
Today.
it was really interesting. It was a Wednesday to a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They also have like Friday to Monday or Friday to Tuesday. You know, there are longer cruises, but
Yeah.
the shorter ones, I mean, if you think about it, right? A Friday to a Monday or even to a Tuesday, you know, maybe you're only taking off 2 days off work.
Right.
And if your kids have off from school, then, you know, even better. So I think it's a good it's a good offer for families.
Yeah.
It's a good opportunity for people who, you know, don't cruise just to like dip their foot in the water.
It really depends on the cruise, because like Ritz-Carlton has a new cruise line, but you're going to start it.
Have you been on Azamara? I'm curious.
No, we're between that and Ritz-Carlton this year to decide. So Azamara is owned
ahead.
by, so Royal Caribbean, Celebrity's our jam. So Celebrity is like
Yeah.
a big,
I believe,
small
just
ship.
So you know, I believe Azamara and
It's-
Margaritaville are in the same family.
No,
They're not in the same
They're not.
level, but I believe that they are owned by the same ship.
they aren't, because the company that owns us, Royal Caribbean doesn't own Margaritaville, do they?
No, they do not.
That's who owns
And
Azamara.
Azamara is separate.
Azamara's,
They're not related. They're not related to Royal Caribbean.
they are. Celebrity.
Celebrity and Royal Caribbean
And
are.
so is Azamara.
I think they
Watch,
were,
check. Watch, check.
I'm gonna
Fact check your boy.
Fact check you.
Fact
but
check
I'm
me.
pretty sure.
Put
that
your vote down in the
Azamara
comments.
Is
separate.
Azamara Cruise Line related? Is a sister company of Celebrity and Royal Caribbean? I'm gonna say yes.
I
And
think
Bex
that-
is saying no.
I'm telling you, I think
I'm
they
not a
were
gambler. I
offloaded.
go to Vegas and I just shop and go to shows, but I bet I'm right.
If I'm right, you owe me dinner.
Sounds like okay. You right here, you see it. If she's right, I'm buying it. If I'm right, that's right. We going to Scores and you buying some lap dances for me and E. No, I'm just playing dinner. But no, so no, but so we're between those two this year at some point. The reason that the smaller ships, because we've looked at a lot of them. Okay, Celebrity, we've done a lot of Celebrity with it, you know, just the two of us. Celebrity is really, really cool. You feel it because Royal Caribbean's ships are nice. They're very upscale overall. Celebrity feels way more upscale than Royal Caribbean, but it's way less exciting. The problem with the smaller ships that are the more upscale is they don't have that kind of entertainment.
Right,
they don't
because you
have the
haven't-
comedy shows.
Which is the Ritz Carlton,
Okay,
which I looked into
so
them.
You
Go
know
ahead.
why, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest.
Different.
It's the cost differential.
Oh yeah,
And also the audience.
right.
And
The demographic.
And the demographic is typically older.
Right.
So it's not a party ship.
But that's like Princess.
But
Princess, you get on there, and I'm like 58
Yeah.
now, and I'm like way too young for
You
Princess.
are.
But
You are young
there's
Yeah.
for a princess. You know,
when, go ahead.
so cruises was always like newlywed or nearly dead. That was always the expression.
That's funny.
If you were
That is
taking
funny.
a cruise, it was newlywed or nearly dead, and some of that stigma has gone away with you know what's being put out. But
Right.
they're still, like you said, with those other ships,
Princess.
they don't attract younger folks.
Right. Virgin. Now,
Because-
what about Virgin's pretty interesting, I hear. You know, Ben did the Virgin thing.
about
and,
those.
and they said there was a lot of thongs and guys getting in elevators without, you know.
Because
Yeah,
it's,
don't take
okay,
the elevator.
So I mean, I've heard like mixed reviews. So you know, it's no kids,
Right, which I
right?
liked.
So it's
Nothing
more of a
against you kids out
party,
there, you people
know.
with kids, but hashtag kidless.
Right.
Dinks.
Dinks.
Right.
Dinks for the win.
Yeah.
So, you know, because of that, it attracts a certain audience, right? It attracts people that party. The pool, not that you go on a cruise for a pool, but the pool sucks. Like, let's be honest, on any of those ships, the pools are not great. They can't hold a lot of people.
No.
And it
heavy,
does
heavy
attract,
chlorine.
and like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm here for it, but you know, it does attract a particular crowd. And if you don't know what you're getting into before signing up,
Yep.
then you may be sorely disappointed. With anything, right? It doesn't matter if it's a cruise, an airline,
Right.
a resort. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. As I mentioned, you know, Carnival has become the spirit of the seas. So if you're okay with that, then by all means, take that ship.
Yeah, it's different than what it used to be. Like we had back in what was
Oh.
2018.
But even
Hell of a time.
Dude, I've been cruising Carnival
Yeah.
since like Like, I
But
mean,
no-
decades, even before we met. And we had great Carnival cruises when we first met and started cruising together. Yeah.
Right. I'm talking about more specifically on the Vista. When it first came out, we had the white party. It was three
Bro,
layers.
Epic.
White, everybody
Epic.
dressed in all white. You know, they had the cruise director. He was on top of the bar, and then he brought up this girl to sing. What was it? It's Petrified or one of the
Whitney song or something.
And she tore
this
it
big
down.
white chick, she shut it down. I made friends with her. We might still be friends on Facebook. I'm like, you should be a star.
And the whole ship was there just cheering her on.
Because they were like, if she
It was
sings
madness.
Whitney and she can't sing Whitney,
Yeah.
it's about to be a problem. I hate to say it, Whitney. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I believe if you guys
did
have
her
been
thing.
battling in karaoke, she gave Whitney a run for her money.
She did her thing, and that was fun. And like, it wasn't ratchet like we were saying. Like,
No,
it
it's
wasn't-
changed.
you know.
And when we did the
Salsa.
cruises,
So Rebecca and I, that's how we met.
Yeah.
So shout out to Big Tony. You know, Big Tony, we love you, brother. In the Shy, back in the Shy, doing his thing, and then and then also shout out to Stuck on Salsa, Gogo, Earl, Kelvin, Janice. I don't know who else was with Stuck on Salsa, so I apologize. But Kelvin and Earl were my boys. But all the people that doing this, like the freaking Aventura and all these other salsa cruises, like everything came after Stuck on
OG.
Salsa. The OG was
after the OG.
in
We were like the originals.
like 25 years ago almost. Yeah.
So, but I think that.
But that's where we met because Tony
Yeah.
was with you and your sister, and he's
Right,
like,
right.
"Hey," because he had moved here then, right? Yeah,
Right,
and I was
right.
still in DC, and he was like, "Oh, I want you to meet some friends of mine." Yep.
I think it was 2005. I want to say 2004, 2005 ish. It was around.
It might have been.
it was-
Yeah.
it was
Maybe
somewhere in
somewhere between.
between.
Yeah.
And one of the years it was Carnival, and the other year was Royal,
Royal
Caribbean.
Caribbean, yeah.
And I will say I enjoyed the Royal Caribbean much better.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was.
a better ship.
And the
It
good
was-
thing was, they gave us a better
the
ship.
Food
So that
was better.
and that's the case. So I'll tell you that even back in the day, back in the day, Carnivals, apples to apples, Carnivals would have had better, like not counting specialty restaurants and stuff. Carnival's food actually was better, and the shows were really good. But like I said, Royal Caribbean just stepped their game up, and Carnival like went the opposite direction.
Right.
So it's like if they were kind of here, like Carnival did this and Royal Caribbean did that, and that's the gap is big now. Celebrity, like I said, is really cool, and like a lot of time. So I always go back to this thing, and my wife, who always reminds me of what we paid for it, and then I go, "Oh yeah, that's why it was like that."
Right.
But
right.
it was,
That was Norwegian.
Norwegian.
wasn't it?
You
It
get
was
what you pay
Norwegian.
for.
Norwegian has something called the Haven,
He got a lot. Let me
Yeah.
tell you.
and it was just nasty. We had in a good way. I mean, nasty, like off the
I'm thinking,
charts.
like-
No, I went old school. Old school, like not Miss Jackson if you're nasty, but like
if you buy a suite, you too can live like a celebrity.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So if if you get a suite, we have suite on Celebrity or suite suite, you get some perks. Like you get some preferred seating, whatever. You get a few things. But that's the one thing I will give to Norwegian in their Haven. Like you have your own. Like and on Celebrity you do like Celebrity. If you stay in a suite, you get your own separate. You get a restaurant that nobody can
Right.
go to but the suite people. You get an elevator, like a club, like a little. You get some areas that are like,
So you got your own elevator,
yeah.
and you got
He's-
your.
he's
Hold
that
on.
bougie.
Yeah. That's. I'm setting him up. He got his own. For folks that don't understand, he got his own elevator. He got his own private seating for the shows.
Like I'm
got
happy.
what eating prep like special
Okay, so-
seating for eating.
So what on Celebrity
Did you have a
Right.
butler?
or
Did you have a
Norwegian?
butler?
You know,
A Norwegian, yeah.
yeah. But,
With
you
the
know,
Haven you did. So first off,
He's
the
not
reason I
bougie.
remember it is like it's because the room had a bathroom, a shower and a tub
Mm-hmm.
in the bathroom, but then we had a hot tub in the middle of the room. It was all wood grained out.
And he had a tub on his ship. How many of y'all seen a tub on a ship?
two tubs.
I'm happy for an
Two
ocean
tubs.
view. Give me a porthole, a window, and
Exactly.
Your butler comes and freaking like so you book a room. So they had like the show. The Blue Man Group was on there, and they had a Cirque show. So you booked the thing for the Blue Man Group. Your butler comes and gets you for the show. He escorts you down to the front row, and like I said, everybody needs to take notes. Carnival, Royal Caribbean, everybody with the suites need to take notes from Norwegian because they did it. They did the damn thing.
Did you give food to the people on the Titanic as you passed them by? Like,
No, man. I was like, hey, you should have made better life choices. Make better life choices. No.
I was fucking with you, Doc.
No, but so Margaritaville overall was a pretty good experience. That's good to hear.
So again, for someone like you that has been on the nicest of the nice. I don't know.
No,
How
it's
you
too late.
could
I'm gonna
take
go
it.
now. I'm gonna see what it is.
Oh, I wanna
I
see this.
did. I
I wanna
had
see it.
I'm gonna do
I
the
had
one out
it-
of Tampa.
I had an ocean view. I do want to do the one out of Tampa. So if you want to like pick a weekend and we all go, like that would be cool.
Let's do it, and we'll come back and tell. Well, look. So on that note, we're gonna like basically that will be part 2 to this episode. We're gonna all try to link up in same time and go on to Margaritaville out of Tampa, and we'll give you
And
the playbook, well informed review of it. Now, before we wrap this episode up, though, I want to ask you. So you had an additional adventure on your way back from the cruise, involving a train. So you took train and.
There's the Amtrak. Why not, right? So on my way, my train was delayed almost 4 hours. And that should have been like the foreshadowing.
No, that is
of
in
this
the
trip.
investigative
that
realm.
Should have been.
That's what we call a clue.
So, I sucked it up. Thankfully, I went out and just, as a side note, I am a travel agent, and I always recommend any of my clients and or friends to arrive at least a day before anything, whether it's a cruise, whether it's a, land, because stuff happens. Flights get delayed,
Right.
trains get delayed, life happens.
Yeah, we talked about that. Life happens. Even the best airlines, in the States now are just horrible. Like compared to I've been flying, a lot for the last 40 years of my life, and it's just the airlines over the last 10 years is just insane what they take from you, and there's no consumer protection. You know what I mean? So
It's a shit show.
it is. You can So
Right.
you give them your people good advice to plan for the worst and make sure you're a day ahead of time.
So, it was delayed, but I made it there, just in the nick of time. I got picked up by my Uber driver to get to the hotel, and this is another clue. Okay, and I'm, since you mentioned clues, the Uber driver wasn't paying attention. He's trying to figure out where my hotel was, and he was going over the tracks, and the thing starts coming down. Okay, because the train was going to leave. And I looked at him, and he was like, "Oh," and he, he like floors it, and I'm thinking, man, a second later, I could have died because he wasn't paying attention.
And I recently heard, I don't know if this is true, but when the train is on the track, it creates like a magnetic force or something like that, so the car actually gets stuck to the track.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd have to look that up. That's even scarier if that's the case.
I don't think that's true.
But that
I only heard it.
But we could fact check that
That
too.
should have been clue number 2.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, that's a clue. That's another clue.
So I went on the cruise. I had a good time. It was a good experience for me. I hadn't been on a cruise in a while. It was a nice little getaway. And so I'm ready to leave. I look at the app. It's delayed. So I'm chilling in Hilton. I ain't leaving. Boarding process was easy, They assign your seat if you didn't already purchase a seat. I didn't. I had the economy rate, And so went on my merry way where, the ride is like 3-4 hours-ish. And about 15 minutes away from Tampa, I'm talking to the person next to me, so I'm turned like I am to you, and I feel a large jolt, and I mean, you can hear screeching, you could see smoke, the whole train shook, nobody knew what was going on, and they didn't tell us either. So the train stops. We were over.
Shout out to Amtrak.
We were over water.
Wow.
So part of the train was on land, and part of the train was over water. And we ended up. I was literally on the train for 12 hours. By the time the train was able to brake, I mean, it like
A train can't stop before it hits something that crosses the track.
Every single time.
Yeah, you have to either make it. You have to stop, or you got to be fast and furious and get across. But and I'm not saying that anybody should try that. Even if maybe when we were younger, I know some people who did that. But I'm just saying you should not ever do that. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. That's why I wanted to.
Because it's stupid.
It's stupid. And what's more, when I was younger, because I'm sometimes a little bit of a comic book, nerd about stuff too. And they used to, like old school, you youngsters might not remember when they used to talk about Superman. And they used to say, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a speeding locomotive, right? Locomotive. And I was like, after I grew up through Superman, I'm like, that's not very impressive. Superman's like, he flew around the world the opposite way and turned back the planet in time. I was like, that whole train thing isn't so impressive. And I will tell you, all joking aside, one of the last accidental death cases I worked as an agent at Fort Bragg was where something called a HIMMET. Any of my military people out there may know what a HIMMET is. But if you don't know what a HIMMET is, it's like a big military tactical vehicle that's probably the size of like an 18-wheeler truck, almost with the wheels on it. But it's huge. It's got big, like 6, 8 big wheels on it, but it's huge. And it looks like anything that ran into a HIMMET would bounce off and hurt itself, right? Mm-hmm. A HIMMET crossed an unguarded railroad crossing out there, meaning there was no guardrail because it's out in the middle of nowhere, and you just kind of have to but the lights flash. Mm-hmm. So I guess the people in it weren't paying attention, and there were 3 people in it, and that train absolutely destroyed that HIMMET. We found, not to be really graphic, but I'm not because people, it was unfortunate what happened, is really sad, but we found like bone and intestines and stuff like strewn like probably like anywhere between 200 and 300 meters all along the track.
Wow. One
only body was intact, got knocked completely like out of the vehicle and probably died instantly on impact. But the other 2 just got decimated by that train. And as at that point that I decided I was never, ever going to rush a train track. If, like it's coming down, because I'm not going to say maybe a time or 2 is like, coming down like, man, downshift, whatever. Fast and Furious, baby. Now I'm like,
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll ride Amtrak again. Apparently, it happens a lot. The same day that we were in an accident, there was an accident in Pennsylvania. And 2 days before that, there was another one in Pennsylvania.
I think I told you briefly. One of my neighbors, when I was in the DMV area, was worked for Amtrak, like corporate, and I used to hear her horror stories. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And I like yourself, growing up in Europe, going to high school in Germany, public transportation and trains, even though I love cars, I love to drive. If I'm not flying, then I love to drive because I don't mind driving still. I enjoy being in the car with my music and my car and my top down, if I, whatever. But like the trains have always been like a really good experience. Yeah. But then like the whole American train Amtrak thing, even like last time, Uhuru and I went to, the time when I went to Milan and got the Ferrari stuff you guys were giving me crap about. This Ferrari stuff. Now this, hold up, before I get recognized this, shout out to my man Lewis Hamilton. His gear is out. Ferrari gear is out. Love F1. Love Hamilton with Ferrari.
Waiting for you to get a W.
That's right. Good. It's coming, baby. So, but I got distracted because my big cat, who's like my child, just ran into my leg because he might be. Hold up, let me see. You want to be on the podcast, buddy? This is Mashita. Hey, handsome. Okay, there. I am furred now. I need a lint roller.
5 minutes of fame.
His 5 minutes of fame. That's Mashita. Mashita Takanachi. His other younger brother, Loki Colton, is somewhere running around here trying to avoid paparazzi. Stand up to camera. But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I'm just glad that it all worked out and you're okay. And if you guys are not sure about what, you have 3 people who travel or cruise a lot, hit us up and ask us questions and we'll, get you an answer between one of us for sure,
Absolutely. Hey, big thank you to Rebecca for joining us on the show. Catch us on the next episode. Until then, this is Playbook.
Peace.